The Talos Principle is a PC game developed by Crow Team and published by Devolver Digital. Taking a leaf from Portal's book, the game is a modular puzzle experience with many interlocking elements. The main campaign consists of 3 major areas, each containing 7 levels. Each level then contains anywhere from 3 to 6 puzzle chambers. Within each chamber there lies a sigil, which marks the puzzle's end goal. These sigils are used in the main hub area to unlock new puzzle elements as well as new areas of the game. Each puzzle chamber builds logically on the last, and by the end, it feels like each element is used to its fullest potential, nothing overstaying its welcome or feeling like a retread. There's no need for explicit tutorials, as all new information is introduced in isolation as its own puzzle. Thus, the player becomes proficient in the game's many systems through the power of their own discoveries. Beyond the sigils, you have the challenge stars. These collectibles are far more difficult to obtain. They require an even greater mastery of the game and a higher level of lateral thinking than any normal chamber. The player will find themselves using puzzle elements in ways they never realized were possible, frequently passing elements between chambers and even smuggling them out. Upon collecting all stars, the player is rewarded with a hidden ending. The story of the Talos Principle is mainly told through text entries and dialogue uncovered at the game's various computer terminals, as well as voice logs found in the various levels. They tell of a simulation designed by humanity's last survivors, intended to succeed the species. As it would seem, some unknown catastrophe occurred, blotting out all sentient life on Earth. The simulation was designed to create a conscious being from nothing but software, to create a person who exists only as code. The player controls a candidate for one such being. Depending on the player's actions, the simulation will either deem them worthy to enter the outside world, or not. The player is accompanied by the almighty Elohim, a guide whose dialogue, name, and depiction draw heavily from religious iconography. Ultimately, the player is left with a decision to either betray Elohim by climbing the Forbidden Tower, or accept his preordained destination. If the game now intrigues you, it's likely due to one or more of the many things I just said about it, but I'm willing to bet it was probably helped a great deal by the accompanying music and visuals on display. The Talos Principle knocks it out of the park with its atmosphere. The game's world is made up of relics from 3 bygone eras in human history. You have the crumbling ruins of Rome overgrown with vegetation, the sands of ancient Egypt with its looming stone effigies, and the castles and fields of medieval Europe in spring and winter. The attention to detail is remarkable. The landscapes have been rendered with a natural beauty and serenity that is hard to describe. It's as if they weren't originally made for the puzzles, but were simply reworked for that purpose. Thus, it feels as though the player is traversing remnants of long-gone civilizations. It's amazing, the combination of this look back on history with the simultaneous contemplation and philosophy regarding the future of humanity and what it means to be. The icing on the cake is this air of the divine. Imagine for a moment that prayers to God were met with audible answers and even encouragement. If you've ever been religious, such imaginings may fill you with a certain melancholy. Of course, the soundtrack is another source of melancholy. While relatively short, it captures a sense of calm desolation which fits well with the visuals. I may even argue the music is more responsible than the visuals for the game's atmosphere. Consider this. If you take the game's puzzle elements, or its story about AI development, and you isolate them in a vacuum, they're not very compelling at all. How many games have laser and cube puzzles similar to this? How many stories feature AI gaining self-awareness? These elements alone likely wouldn't drive me to replay the Talos Principle time and time again. In fact, they can be viewed as quite derivative. However, it's the atmosphere, the mystique, which ties it all together and makes it more than the sum of its parts. It's this quality of games that drew me to the medium even when I was very young. Many have described the pastime of video games using the word escapism. It's the idea that you play games to temporarily suspend this reality and replace it with a new one. Of course, this can vary in meaning and intensity for different people. Some are just looking for a bit of simple fun. They may view the medium not unlike a game of checkers or Scrabble. For them, the escapism at play is more so tied to the people with whom they experience games. Still others may primarily see gaming as a storytelling medium, where the level of escapism, the level of immersion, is determined by their connection to characters in an overarching narrative. Me? I primarily see the medium as a means of delivering explorable spaces to the player. I'm literally that kid in old commercials that got sucked into the TV and found himself in a new world. The gaming experiences which have consistently topped my favorites list have all delivered this sort of new reality in one way or another. As should be obvious, the more a game lets the player freely explore, the stronger this new reality effect is for me. I've also found myself drawn to experiences which challenge my mind in inventive ways. Taking this into account, it should become clear why any game which revokes freedom, offers a large amount of story bloat, or infantilizes the player with excessive tutorials or handholding scores lower on my list. Some games put blockages between the player and the world they're being given to experience. Now, does this mean Tim's list is topped only with pretty-looking walking simulators? In fact, no. When stepping into a new reality, you clearly want some sort of mechanic or goal driving your experience. Otherwise, it ceases being a new reality and becomes a digital art museum. The ideal balance is a game which offers plenty of mechanical depth and goals to accomplish, combined with a world full of atmosphere. Given these parameters, it should be no surprise that my favorite games list is consistently topped by Metroidvanias. They offer massive worlds to uncover, and as you uncover them, you're simultaneously amassing pieces to a world-sized puzzle. It's the most elegant possible design structure for appealing to my sensibilities. After Metroidvania, it would seem that the next best genre for me would be atmospheric puzzle games. They're guaranteed to keep my brain occupied, but they also supply me with a world of beauty. Even if they don't wrap their entire gameplay loop around exploration, they often offer it as optional content to flesh out the experience. Next on my list are sandboxes. They quite literally offer the player a new reality to step into. While often not featuring strong goals or direction, they thrive on the ability of the player to set their own goals. One such game, Minecraft, has given me thousands of hours of enjoyment. Beyond that, simply offering atmosphere or exploration mixed with other genres will do it for me. Think about how Half-Life or Super Mario Odyssey might feel if you stripped them down to their raw shooter or platformer elements. Those games' worlds play a large role in the experience. Having the proclivities that I do, I've found that Ebb Software's October release Scorn is right up my alley. After a short intro, the game immediately engrosses the player in a visceral, disturbing landscape directly inspired by the works of H.R. Giger. The player is offered no guidance, being left to meander forward in fear of what might await them. The game is primarily a puzzle-solving adventure in the vein of Amnesia, with tense gunplay as a supplement. During the adventure, the player is constantly given a choice between facing threats or hiding from them. As such, fear is a natural hindrance to progress, and it can be very potent. Each room is filled with strange sights and sounds, and it can often be hard to discern what's a threat and what's a decoration. While playing, I often found myself paralyzed at every noise, unable to identify what was happening. It made for an unforgettable experience. Seldom in my adult life have I felt fear of this magnitude. As for the game's story, it's almost entirely told through environmental details in combination with the events that take place from the player's perspective. It's rare in this day and age for a game's story to be so tastefully hands-off in its delivery. There are a few very clear events, but the context surrounding those events is left to interpretation. Scorn knows what it's about, and so it keeps its focus on what matters. It's a short yet sweet experience offering an intriguing world full of fear and puzzles. A treat worth savoring. Gaming as a medium, like all others, has its own unique strengths. Just as film has largely embraced its differences from literature, I feel that gaming deserves to embrace its differences from film. I've found that attempts to recreate a movie-watching experience inside of games most often leaves me disinterested. However, when a game offers an experience that can't be found anywhere else, when it hands the reins over to me and says go, I know I'm in for a great time.
The answer that came to me again and again was play. Every human society in recorded history has games. We don't just solve problems out of necessity. We do it for fun. Even as adults. Leave a human being alone with a knotted rope, and they will unravel it. Leave a human being alone with blocks, and they will build something. Games are part of what makes us human. We see the world as a mystery, a puzzle, because we've always been a species of problem solvers.